Modern. It's back on the menu. I honestly have not been this excited to build a deck, shuffle up and play since I first got into the format 8 or so years ago. Modern Horizons 2 brings to Modern all the rich wonder and tantalizing gameplay possibilities that a standard set is forbidden from biting into. So presented here are my picks for the top 5 Modern Horizons 2 cards. No, not for Commander. No, not for Pauper. No, not for Legacy. No, not for Standard. It doesn't even work that way. Pay attention, please. No, what even is Pioneer? I've never heard of it, but yes, the 5 best new cards for Modern. But first, a quick word about this video. This video is sponsored by Keeps, a subscription men's health brand for hair loss prevention. I've said before I love the Modern format because it lets me control what deck I play, and that deck is a reflection of myself, who and how I want to be perceived by others. And I chose Merfolk. And hey, that's kind of like how in life we all want to control how we look and present ourselves, but that can be tough for some of us when our body doesn't give us control over things like our hair. Well, that's where Keeps comes in. Keeps is a tool that can help you maintain control over how you want to look, and it's an affordable tool. There's only 2 FDA-approved hair loss products out there, and Keeps is the generic version of these, so it is significantly more affordable than those effective yet expensive name brands. And that's Keeps, that's it! Medication at a huge savings, and it's available for you should you want it. And Keeps offers its doctor consultations online, so you can get treated from home, and yeah, you're working with licensed doctors. The medication is delivered right to your door, all of which makes for a safe, secure, and especially easy process. There is nothing wrong with being bald or balding, just like there's nothing wrong with playing Modern Merfolk. You are gorgeous and you are sexy however you are and whoever you want to be. And Merfolk is a legitimate competitive deck with many top 8 finishes. But for some of us out there, how we want to present ourselves on the outside maybe needs some aid. And so if you're ready to take action and prevent hair loss, go to keeps.com/Tolarian or click the link in the description to receive 50% off your first order. That's KEEPS.com/Tolarian. Remember, the true sexy is being yourself, long hair or no, however you want to be. For some of us, Keeps can help us shape ourselves as we choose and save a few bucks along the way. Thank you, Keeps, for sponsoring this video. Now, it's always hard to limit my list down to only 5 picks, and I may have cheated a little this time. But before I even get there, I need to start with an honorable mention, a spell to Modern that warms my heart. It's Counterspell, True Blue Counterspell. The alpha card with the iconic art, even without that iconic art, is still one of the happiest reprints for this format I could have asked for. Why then is it only an honorable mention? For the exact reason I and many others have been arguing to put Counterspell in Modern for years now. It just isn't that big of an impact on the format. Honestly, Force of Negation is going to end up having more impact than True Blue Counterspell will, for the simple fact that Mana Leak isn't that impactful in Modern, and for the first 3 to 4 turns, Counterspell is essentially a mana leak, really only coming into its own late game when mana is readily available, which is where Mana Leak becomes less effective. I think Delver decks are the ones that were most interested in Counterspell, and maybe they can use it to gain more advantage once again. But again, a Delver deck in Modern is already looking to have one, or near one, by the time Mana Leak becomes obsolete. So Counterspell really only helps it past the point where it is probably too late to matter. You can also see Blue Moon and that old faithful Mono Blue Tron put Counterspell to good use, but at the end of the day, it's just likely going to become a toy for Merfolk to play with, as a couple of main board, and even then mostly as something just to pitch for force. And speaking of Merfolk, I am going to use slot number 5 on the list for every single Merfolk relevant card in Modern Horizons 2. I told you I was going to cheat a bit on this list. There's just too many good cards for Modern in Modern Horizons 2. So number 5 is Rishadan Deckhand, Tideshaper, and the god whose name I can't pronounce. And yes, I am serious. When I say Merfolk just got a huge chest of power toys in these 3 cards, and is probably better poised than at any other time to finally become a legitimate deck to be feared in the format. Rashad and Dockhand gives you the choice of land denial and then a body to swing in with late game once your lords are out and your opponent out-tempoed. Probably the best new card for the deck, but in no way to overshadow Tide Shaper, a spreading seas on a stick who can add feet to the ground and in some matchups, literally, just be a 2/2 for 1 blue without the need to be kicked. You see, Spreading Seas always turned into a dead card when up against blue and blue X decks. But in those matchups, Shaper just drops for 1 and beats in immediately. With the turn 2 Lord, this swings against a blue island opponent for 3 damage, unblockable, turn 2? Already a nasty piece of work, let alone the protection that an in-hand force offers us. And of course, a turn 3 god of the unpronounceable, bringing us ward for all our fish, and card draw to keep gas in our hand. Truly, Merfolk were given relevant gifts in Modern Horizons 2. Hope you already have copies of Lord of Atlantis. Coming in at number 4 for Modern is another multi-card tie. Hey, it's Modern Horizons 2. What do you want from me? There's a lot of spicy stuff here, and I just can't decide between Force of Thoughtseize or Force of Swords to Plowshares. So why not both? By Force of Swords to Plowshares, I of course mean Solitude. It has a casting cost, but who cares? It also has Evoke. Exile a white card from your hand, and when Solitude enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 other target creature. That creature's controller gains life equal to its power. The body here is 3/2 and has lifelink. But basically, exile a white card from your hand, just as Force of Will has you exile a blue card from your hand, and Swords to Plowshares an opponent for free, at instant speed. And if you really want to get nasty, use Ephemerate and lock them out for a good long while. But I also love Force of Thoughtseize, otherwise known as Grief. There's a casting cost there too, it's Menace and 3/2, never mind any of that. Exile a black card from your hand. When Grief enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it, any non-land card from it. That player discards that card. You've heard of turn 1 Thoughtseize, well, how about 0 cost Evoke Grief? There's probably going to be a lot of arguments from all of you about which one of these 2 cards is actually better in Modern, and I'm not going to try and stop you. That's great engagement. Get into a fight in the comments over Grief versus Solitude. YouTube might actually get confused by it and suggest my channel to new viewers. Coming in number 3 is Jund. That's right, Jund. Otherwise known as the 4 times as popular and 10 times as expensive version of Merfolk. And it has once again gotten the nod of approval from the parental figure of Wizards of the Coast in the form of Ignoble Hierarch. Ignoble Hierarch is a goblin, oh my, shaman, oh double my, with Exalted, and that you can tap to add Jund. So it's a noble hierarch, but for Jund, and wow, does Jund love it. But that's not all, because goblins do too. I don't know about modern shamans, but I was at first overwhelmingly scared for the myriad possibilities that this brings to goblin decks as a 1/1 Exalted, let alone with that green fixing. But at the end of the day, it's Jund that wants to them out, with the overwhelming threat of a turn 2 Liliana, locking our opponents forever, and it's just too powerful to pass up. Besides goblins, I suppose there are other non-Jund possibilities, such as Bloodbraid Elf for Cascade lists, and Infect for black-green lists, both of which can possibly get a blast of power from this Ignoble Goblin. An automatic staple for the format and my number 3 pick for Modern from Modern Horizons 2. Alright, the number 2 and number 1 picks for Modern were closer than ever. 2 fantastic cards. Though I had to assign each a number and just barely decided that the number 2 spot would go to Urza's Saga. Look, I don't throw around the phrase broken lightly, but wow. If there were ever a broken card for Modern, this would be it, right? It's an enchantment land, and so you just play it as a land drop. Its first chapter just makes it a waste, where you can tap it to add a colorless, but its second chapter gives it the ability to spend 2 and tap to create a 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token, with this creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. Interesting. Chapter 3 is the doozy though, because you search your library for an artifact card with mana cost 0 or 1 and put it, whoa, onto the battlefield, not into hand, but onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Now you do sacrifice it after chapter 3, though there are a few ways around that, not to mention recursion. But before we we even get to that, is this ever a wonderful gift to all those Affinity players who had their decks banned out from under them with Mox Opal? But Urza Saga is going to be of use to so much more than just Affinity, as it combos amazingly with, well, a lot of things, from Hardened Scales decks, to Power Conduit shenanigans, to, sadly, making Lantern Control even more of a misery to play against. The fact that there's just so many decks that can make so much use of this is why it has the word trouble written all over it. It isn't narrow. It has a wide swath of uses. Heck, there are a lot of builds that are going to enjoy Chapter 2, and I was very close to calling this the best card of the set for Modern, but that honor instead went to a wonderful little card that I had been chasing after for the format for years. And that's because coming in at number 1 is Shardless Agent. I called it. I so called it. Let me have this. I did not see the leak. And Shardless Agent is going to make huge waves in Modern. For those unaware, Shardless Agent is an artifact creature, a human rogue, for one of any color, a green and a blue. And it has Cascade, meaning when you cast the spell, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card that costs less. You may cast it without paying its mana cost. Between the already legal Bloodbraid Elf and the equally awesome, and not quite there because of Delirium, Bloodbraid Marauder, Cascade is really going to be a threat to be reckoned with in the new Modern. Now, I know there's a lot of excitement for Marauder's turn 2 Cascade possibility, and I'm not saying it's impossible, especially not in a format with so many fetch lands, but honestly, I'm just of the belief that that Delirium requirement is too high to pull off regularly, consistently, which is what you want in Modern. I'm not saying that it's not going to see play, but it just doesn't get a spot on the top 5 because of that. Shardless, on the other hand, has no such restriction. It's a simple 3 CMC Cascade and Simic, and I think that Bloodbraid, as I mentioned, is going to come along for the ride in most of these new Cascade builds, creating not Simic Cascade, but red, blue, green ones. Teamer time! But even with red in those lists, I don't see Marauder having a home there. Perhaps if it turns up in more of a Jun Death Shadows build, I could see it capitalizing off it to search up a Death's Shadow, but I don't have a lot of faith in that. Shardless brings big value, and in addition to new emerging Cascade lists, might be brought into existing Stoneblade lists, or even serve as a new toy for humans because, that's right, like many creatures, it's a human. Either way, while it's the best new card for Modern from Modern Horizons 2, it is far from the only. And as you can see, there's so much value in this set for the format that limiting myself to only 5 picks was kind of impossible on my part. But now I want to hear for you. What are you going to build in Modern? Never even mind the top 5 cards from Modern Horizons 2. What are you going to build? What are you excited to build? Are you dusting off an old Modern design or thinking up something new? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, if you're ready to take action and prevent hair loss, go to keeps.com/Tolarian or click the link in the description to receive 50% off your first order. That's KEEPS.com/Tolarian. Thank you, Keeps, for bringing this video to my audience, as well as bringing this great offer.
Can I call you back? I just ran into an old friend. Professor! You paisley old rogue!
Teferi, you guy that I like.